Heya Cryptozens, it's 10 p.m. Pacific time. My name is Nikodemus, and welcome back to the Crypto Overnighter, where we take a nightly look at the crypto, NFT, and metaverse space. And keep in mind, nothing in this show should ever be considered financial advice. Here we are, middle of the week again. It's Wednesday, November 23rd, 2022. Let's get to work. And I think I'm going to continue my pattern of other news first, and then we'll get into the craziness that is the FTX saga. The Bank of Japan has yet to decide whether or not they will be issuing a central bank digital currency. Now, if you've listened to this show before, you know my stance on CBDCs. They rob the customer of their privacy, they rob the customer of their control, because the central bank can block or even reverse transactions. And we're going to be talking about stablecoins versus CBDCs here in a bit. And while I'm not a big fan of CBDCs, the Bank of Japan is still experimenting with a digital yen. And so it came to pass that Japan's central bank announced their partnership with 3 megabanks as well as a number of regional banks. This partnership is to conduct a CBDC issuance pilot project, which means that the Bank of Japan will be working with major banks and other financial institutions to detect and resolve problems related to customer deposits as well as withdrawals from bank accounts. And this is the tricky one, I think, because the pilot will also be testing the offline capability of Japan's potential CBDC. This means payments with no internet, just like the old days, which has been one of the biggest stumbling blocks for nations wanting to adopt a CBDC. Now, Japan's central bankers are planning on continuing with CBDC experimentation for the next 2 years. They expect to make a decision on whether to issue a CBDC by 2026. This pilot project is expected to start in spring of next year. Now let's go from Asia to the Americas, because El Salvador has a new bill to raise $1 billion and put that money into building Bitcoin City. Now, for a while, after El Salvador decided to make Bitcoin legal tender, Bukele has taken quite a bit of heat regarding that decision. That said, that heat has since cooled off somewhat. Perhaps because the entire crypto industry is freezing in the depths of crypto winter, so pointing out El Salvador just doesn't make sense. El Salvador has not been just marking time, apparently. I saw a recent announcement that Bukele's government plans to buy a Bitcoin a day. In the meantime, El Salvador's Minister of the Economy, Maria Luisa Heya announced a bill that confirms the plan to sell bonds and build a Bitcoin city. That's still a go. Now, the idea of these volcano bonds, as they're called, or Bitcoin bonds, it was an interesting one. Just the kind of idea that a bull market produces. Introduced last year, this plan would see roughly $1 billion in bonds issued. Half of the proceeds of that bond sale would go to the creation of a city at the base of the Colchagua volcano. Now, the intent of that is to use the natural hydrothermal energy of the volcano to generate electricity. Now, the other half of the money would be invested directly in Bitcoin. And this project has been delayed several times. It was supposed to take off back in March, and then in September, it was put off due to what they called security concerns. As it stands, this bill could see legislative approval before Christmas. Bitpanda announced today that they have a crypto custody license courtesy of the German financial authority, BaFin. Now, the Austrian crypto exchange can legally market itself to the German people. Bitpanda also gets to say that they are the first retail exchange from Europe to have done so. Bitpanda has gone on something of a campaign, kind of like what Binance has done in the past, going from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, adding to the list of countries they can do businesses by acquiring local licenses. That list now includes Austria, of course, the UK, Italy, the Czech Republic, Spain, Sweden, and France. Now, Bitpanda isn't the first ones to get this crypto custody license. Coinbase, Capilendo, Tangeni, and Upvest have all gotten this license. But they're geared towards institutional investors. And while Coinbase is a retail platform, they're from the US, not Europe. And so that's why Bitpanda gets to be the first European player to provide retail crypto services in Germany. Eric Demuth is Bitpanda's CEO. And he congratulated the whole team, saying it was the result of many months of work. He also said that this is an opportunity for Bitpanda to prove that it's a trustworthy custodian for people's crypto assets. He said, quote, "We can and will prove that we mean business when it comes to Bitpanda making customer safety our top priority. Acquiring licenses might be difficult in and of itself, but we are absolutely committed to continuing on this path because it is the only right thing to do." In other exchange-related news, OKX released their Proof of Reserves page, and it comes with instructions on how to carry out your own audit of their reserves. Proof of Reserves being an idea that has gained some traction recently since the collapse of FTX. The idea being that it would show you how healthy an exchange or some other custodian is based on their assets versus their debits. And in their announcement, OKX said that there are two options for viewing the audit of the exchange's reserves. One is a current summary of the exchange reserves and its liability as far as Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Tether go. At the time of writing, their reserve summary says that they have 102% of the Bitcoin needed to cover all customer withdrawals. Same story with Ethereum, 102% of what they would need. Meanwhile, they have 101% of the Tether needed to make investors whole. Now, that's their first option. The second is something called View My Audit. This lets you, as a specific user, you can log in and view a snapshot of your balances stored on OKX. These totals will equal those found on the Asset Overview page in the app. That is, unless the user has taken out margin loans. Lennox Lai is OKX's Director of Financial Markets, and it's their view that this Proof of Reserve page will bring needed transparency to the crypto market. Quote, "Our new Proof of Reserves page and self-audit feature give users the ability to verify that their assets are 100% backed. Third-party audits are also being conducted to provide additional reassurance on top of this. We believe that a far greater degree of transparency needs to be brought to our industry to allow us to build back stronger after recent events." Now, bringing things back to the United States, a central banker was caught standing up for stablecoins, which is shocking, right? Antoine Martin is a financial stability advisor at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Now, he was at an event in London on Tuesday when he said, quote, "Instead of issuing a retail CBDC, central banks could support stablecoins by allowing them to be backed one for one with balances in a central bank account." Now, the event was held at the Gilmore Center Policy Forum at Warwick Business School in London, and he favorably compared stablecoins to CBDCs, saying, quote, "Adapting our regulatory and legislative environment to support stablecoins is already a formidable task, but it is probably easier than managing a CBDC for retail use, especially as the private sector currently provides all retail digital means of payments on legacy technology." That's been one of my arguments all along. Why are we reinventing the wheel? You have private organizations willing to do the work to provide a working product to the public without great additional expense. Can you imagine how much it's going to cost to stand up a CBDC? These companies are willing to absorb that cost for nothing. Now, Martin compared stablecoins to Chinese payment platforms like Alipay. He described them as close cousins, because with those platforms, the same thing. The service has to hold the equivalent balance of yuan in a bank account with the central bank. So stablecoins could do the same thing the same way. Now, that is a bit of a departure from the position that the Fed took in February, where they argued stablecoins are unlikely to be a part of the future of payments. Martin said basically, existing forms of digital money were sufficient and could be improved upon by issuing tokenized deposits. In FTX-related news, the Democratic senator from Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren, spoke out. In a Wall Street Journal op-ed piece, she attempted to draw some link between the fall of FTX and how it could cause the U.S. financial system to collapse. A known opponent of the industry, Warren reinforced her negative stance in the wake of the exchange's collapse. Pro-crypto folks tend to think that the path of crypto is going to be a bit rocky, sure, but ultimately will end up benefiting mankind greatly. Warren doesn't see things that way. She said the path of crypto starts off promising exciting rewards, but will end in, quote, crippling losses. She compared crypto to subprime mortgages, credit default swaps, and penny stocks. But this really just shows me that the senator is ill-informed where crypto is concerned. Because while there's certainly room for regulation, especially in the centralized exchange space, DeFi just works differently. The same regulatory approach won't work. Which, to be honest, none of this is surprising. I just don't trust the same people that got us into the current mess we're in. I certainly don't trust them how to figure out how to get out of it. And I damn sure don't trust them to have clue one about what works and what doesn't work for the U.S. economy, much less this industry. Now, frankly, her position completely ignores that success comes after many failures. It's not like the old way of doing things is working. Traditional finance is still broken, as is evidenced by the housing crisis of 2008. And she was serving as a senator when it happened, so she was in charge. If traditional finance was working, there would be no need for crypto. Just saying. At any rate, she wasn't done there. In addition to her WSJ piece, Warren and Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse sent a letter to U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland and Assistant Attorney General Kenneth Polite. What they want is for Garland and Polite to launch an investigation into FTX's demise. The words they used were utmost scrutiny. And as justification for the investigation, they cite the damage done by FTX to related companies like Genesis and BlockFi. And they did call Sam Bankman-Fried out for his role in things, including his "things are fine" tweet. And I am in the rare position of agreeing with Senator Warren in this case, because in the letter, Sam's executive team was described as, quote, inexperienced and unsophisticated. Quote, the fall of FTX was not simply a result of sloppy business and management practices, but rather appears to have been caused by intentional and fraudulent tactics employed by Mr. Bankman-Fried and other FTX executives to enrich themselves. We urge the department to center these flesh and blood victims as it investigates and, if it deems necessary, prosecute the individuals responsible for their harm. Now, you can see that they're coming for Sam. And I don't feel bad for him by any means, but they are. Think about how the lawyers for FTX hung him out to dry yesterday during the bankruptcy's inaugural meeting. And now, they're going after Sam pretty hard. Meanwhile, Sam's writing letters of his own. Instead of going to U.S. officials, however, this most recent letter was sent to the FTX team. And he apologizes. Again. In a letter dated yesterday, Sam breaks down the reasons for FTX's liquidity crisis as well as the bankruptcy. Now, he confirmed most of what the media has put out there. That said, placing blame on the economy, SBF cited crypto winter as one of the leading factors reducing the value of FTX's assets. He totaled up the damage of November's run on the bank. He said that took the exchange's collateral down to roughly $9 billion, with roughly $8 billion in liabilities. He said, quote, I never intended this to happen. I did not realize the full extent of the margin position, nor did I realize the magnitude of the risk posed by a hyper-correlated crash. So he describes his failure as one of oversight, saying that he should have shown more skepticism of large margin positions. He said that they should have had controls in place to monitor and simulate things like crashes and bank runs. And in the letter, he regrets having taken FTX into bankruptcy. He said, quote, maybe there's still a chance to save the company. I believe that there are billions of dollars of genuine interest from new investors that could go into making customers whole. But I can't promise you that anything will happen because it's not my choice. Yeah, I don't see that happening, Sam. I just don't see it happening. And that's going to do it for us tonight. I want to thank you, my listeners, because when you stop listening, I will stop talking. We'll see you tomorrow night.